Welcome back to Two Pentecostals and a Microphone. I'm one of the hosts, one of the said Pentecostals, Bryce, Kyle. First of all, I just want to apologize for our lapse in new episodes for the last few weeks or so. Unfortunately, podcasting is not what Jared and I do primarily. I wish it was. It'd be nice. But we do have jobs outside of this podcast, and those jobs took us out of town and on business trips, and I had a school thing. I got really tied up in the school that I teach at, and so we took a break for a little bit, but now we're back, and we have some real exciting episodes coming up, and we're going to unveil one of those today. It is an interview episode with Nathan Maki. He is a prolific writer of historical fiction, and both Jared and I really enjoyed this episode, so I hope you do as well. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, this is Brother Maki. Mackie? Sorry.
Yes, how you doing?
Hey, good. This is Jared Mize.
And I'm Bryce Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah, Bryce Kyle. I don't know if you got that.
Bryce
Yeah.
Kyle. Okay.
Yeah.
So is
All right.
it Mackie? Is that right?
That's right, Mackie,
Okay.
yeah.
For some reason, I always want to say Maki, and everybody else says Mackie, but I assume that it probably was Mackie. But
Yeah, no, Mackie's right.
what part of Canada exactly are you from?
I'm actually from Ontario, so that's directly above New York.
Okay.
There in Canada, so it's about an hour south of the capital, which is Ottawa. And probably the most familiar that people would be Toronto, which is about 3 hours sort of southwest of us. So
Okay.
not in any kind of big cities, but close by. So.
Yeah. I've actually been to Toronto a few times. My brother went to college there, so...
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so I had to kind of go back and forth to meet up with him sometimes. So
Right.
I've been one time as a kid. We went to Niagara, and that's about as far. I mean, we went through Canada down through Detroit, but I don't remember much. I don't know if there's much there, but I don't remember much of anything. So evidently, we bypassed all the exciting stuff. So.
Well, Niagara and Toronto, and that is a lot happening down there. So
Yeah, I think we missed Toronto somehow. I need to make a trip back up there.
Niagara is a couple hours from Toronto, but
Okay.
I guess you saw the falls there. And
Yeah, we saw the falls, and I remember going to a museum. I don't know what that was all about, but the falls were that was really cool. I want to take my wife there at some point, but we haven't made it up yet.
honeymoon capital of the world.
That's where my parents went on their honeymoon, actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
We kind of take it for granted because it's kind of right in our backyard, but people come from all over the world. So
yeah, it is pretty amazing. Even as a kid, I still remember being pretty amazed by it. So Bryce is reading your book right now, right?
yeah, I'm about halfway through The Keeper's Crown.
Yeah, and I read it as a beta reader, and I have to say I've not really had a chance to talk to you like this in person yet, but we've talked on Facebook. I don't really read historical fiction all that much. Maybe this might be the third book in that genre that I've ever read, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm not an expert, but I really liked it.
there we go. It might make a convert out of you.
Exactly. Yeah, you very well might. So I think one of those other two that I read was one of yours as well. One of not the Praetorian. What?
The War Within.
The War Within.
The Gladiator. Gladiator.
Gladiator. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. First in the series. Yeah.
Which I need to read the rest of that series still, but so I really enjoyed it. And we've actually interviewed Pastor Larry Airwood, our pastor, who's an author as well. And and his son, Aaron Arrowwood, wrote a book that called Countercultural Youth Ministry, and it's basically a
how to
kind of like a memoir slash how to do youth ministry. So we've had a couple authors on before, but this is the first time we've had somebody. Pastor Arrowwood does fiction as well, but we talked more about his nonfiction stuff. So this is really the first time we've had somebody that focuses fiction. So it's a little different, but we wanted to ask you a few questions related to that. First one being, I guess, how do you get your ideas? No, I'm only kidding. That's probably what everybody asks, right? No,
yeah, sure.
No, I'm just. I won't make you answer that question.
No, a lot of times my ideas sort of come up even as I'm reading the Bible. And that sounds uber spiritual, but not really. But yeah, just kind of as I'm reading, I start thinking, what if sort of thing, or oh, that's a cool a little snippet, So this one really grew out of, Acts chapter 28, where it says Paul came to Rome and he was allowed to dwell by himself in his own hired house with a soldier that kept him. And,
right.
Just kind of looking into that a little bit more and found out that he literally would have been chained to a soldier for that 2 years that he spent in Rome under house arrest. And then I'm thinking, well, what would that have been like to be chained to Paul for 2 years of his life? The last days of Paul, and you're chained to him. What kind of an impact would that be on your life? And so I sort of, developed the story from there. Developing a character, a young Roman named Quintus that's completely opposed to. He's a pagan. He's completely opposed to all things Christian, and the idea of one God just boggles his mind, and he's completely opposed to Paul. Paul's brought nothing but trouble into his life. He's been demoted from being a cavalry squadron leader to just being chained to Paul. He thinks it's the end of his quest for success, and he wants to win a victor's crown and restore his family's honor, and instead he ends up chained to this, as he sees, just this rabble-rouser that's been all over the world stirring up trouble, and here he is chained to him, and the trials are dragging on, and he's just kind of, stuck in limbo. But as he's there, of course, he's witnessing Paul's life, he's witnessing, Paul's writings as he's writing the epistles, he's overhearing him dictate these, and the impact that has on his life that, of course, by the end, he becomes a convert, and I just thought that'd be so interesting to tell Paul's last days, and the story of that, because the book of Acts sort of abruptly ends. It just says he dwelt 2 whole years in his own hired house with the soldier that kept him, and that just ends. And we're kind of left like, Luke, where's the rest of the story? So that was sort of my, I guess, motivation for this is sort of like, what is the rest of the story, and piecing that together from, the epistles, different letters that he's writing while he's in prison, and just the hints that come from that, from early church authors, from historians looking back over it, and it was quite a challenge, really, to get to know Paul and to try and do him justice as such a big character.
That's one of the things I loved about the book was that it was like an in-depth character study of Paul in a lot of ways. It's like you were there in the moment with him. So I really enjoyed that. I guess that's not such a bad question for somebody who does biblical historical fiction, because you're not just pulling ideas out of thin air or whatever. They're from they're coming from that, the Bible, from history. So how much do you think that, your Bible quizzing or your history degree play into this? It has to be a lot easier if you just already know all these verses by heart rather than having to look through. Cause I read in your bio that you memorized 6,000 verses. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I was in Bible quizzing. Some people would be aware of it, and some people wouldn't. But I was in Bible quizzing, a program called Bible Quizzing, for 13 years. So from the time I was 5 until I was 18 and aged out. And it's basically kind of like a reach for the top sort of thing, but you're being quizzed over Bible verses, so quoting and answering questions from Bible verses. And so learning between 250 and 550 verses a year for 13 years, and so yeah, actually it is quite cool because I did memorize a lot of these. We did a year on Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians, one on Thessalonians and Timothy and Titus. So it was quite cool to sort of retrace my steps through that, and we did the Book of Acts as well. So definitely familiar territory for me, although I did have to go back and refresh. It's been a few years since my Bible quizzing days, but it was cool to be able to pull those ideas out, and then I do have a background in history as well, so doing the actual research through the historians, and I had 4 or 5 different texts about the life of Paul that I was sort of amalgamating and bringing together, and as it is with many histories, you don't necessarily have one particular version. Everybody's sort of taking the facts and trying to fit them in and see where they fit. So trying to take the 4 different takes on Paul and sort of bring them together and synthesize a character study, like you said, of Paul, but then make it more than just a character study, because there are character studies of Paul already out there, but I wanted to present this in a very immediate way, seeing it through the eyes of a non-believer looking into the life of Paul and seeing, and I'm hoping that through this it'll both encourage believers and non-believers, whatever perspective people are coming to the book from, that it'll really encourage them to really embrace the same spirituality and courage that Paul had.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a lot more real when you read it in the fictional setting like that, where you're there with the character and you're almost like you're there in the room, rather than maybe reading someone writing about Paul. So,
and that's the great thing about fiction is it can give you that immediacy that even through writing the book myself, I feel like I've gotten to know Paul. That a lot of times myself, even having read his writings and seen and memorized his life there in the Book of Acts, but he always seemed like he was, and he still is, this larger than life character, but to try and bring him to a level where he's relatable is sort of what I was trying to do as well. That it's like, okay, yes, he was this hero of faith, and he was a giant and a missionary of the faith, but he was also a guy. He also, had his foibles. He had, times when I'm sure he was angry. I'm sure there were times where, he wanted his way, and, he was going to sort of twist people's arm to see it happen. He was bold about, bringing the gospel, and, if he got kicked out of the synagogue, he was going to start a church, and it says hard by the synagogue. He's going to rent the storefront right next door to the synagogue, and he's going to have church, and he's going to be bringing people from the synagogue daily. Every Sabbath, they're going to be coming over because he's having apostolic church, and they're having, their old-fashioned religion, and, he's bringing people over. And, just that kind of audacity and boldness of Paul as well that I tried to capture, but also, I think especially by the end of his life, I think the kindness and the insight and the gentleness and mentoring, as he began to take younger men under his wing and began to raise them up as well as the next generation, that, I think that's really something that Paul developed over the time in his life, as he was first mentored by Barnabas, and then they had a disagreement over John Mark because Barnabas wanted to mentor John Mark, and Paul said, no, he's not worth the time. And, I think he realized that by the end. And, you see him writing things like, to Timothy, he said, take Mark and bring him with me, for he's profitable to me for the gospel. By the end of his life, he had grown as a character. So trying to bring out that, that character arc over the course of the book as well.
That's right. He's not really just a static character. There is a lot of growth there. That's a good point.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I absolutely love fiction. I love to read, and especially like Christian fiction. Have you ever read like Frank Peretti?
I have, yes. Yeah, I cut my eye teeth on Piercing the Darkness and
Yeah.
Which Present Darkness, yeah.
That's what I was going to mention was that I loved how you said like kind of like this is how it could be.
Right.
And like when you read This Present Darkness and see kind of like the what the spiritual world or spiritual realm could possibly be, it's interesting to me. And I've enjoyed Keeper's Crown. I haven't finished it yet, but planning on to in the next couple weeks or so. But it is really good. I think we want to talk a little bit about your writing process. Could you expound on, the writing process and Christian fiction and so forth?
Sure. So my process, like I said, I start off with a kind of a big idea, and I usually try and start off with a theme, or to address even a question that I have in my own mind, or a theme that I want to explore. Especially with The Keeper's Crown here, it really grew out of a time in my life personally where I was saying, what is success?
Right.
I'm a writer, I'm a pastor of a small church, I'm a businessman, and I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a Christian. What does success look like, by the world's standards, by God's standards, and, really especially, what is godly success? And how does it differ from the world's view of success? And, am I a success? And if I'm not, how can I be a success? Sort of those questions and that desire to answer those questions as I was exploring the life of Paul. And so that's really the sort of the overarching. So I usually start with sort of that idea, and then I'll, kind of line out, just in a single sentence what the theme is, what the plot is, and then I sort of build a pyramid from there. So I start building, okay, so what genre am I going to use? Am I going to be first person or third person? What's my perspective going to be? And then I start breaking it down into, okay, what do I want to do in the first third, the second third, the fourth, the third third, and then breaking that down into chapters. And then what do I want to accomplish in each chapter? So I'm fairly structured. I'm a fairly structured writer. I'm more of a planner than, they say, a pantster, kind of seat your pants writer. I like to kind of know where the story is going and what I'm wanting to accomplish with this particular chapter. So I sort of sit down before I ever start trying to put prose together, and I try and envision the entire story and sort of plan it out, and how am I going to get from point A to point Z at the end. And of course, the story sometimes takes on a life of its own. You had mentioned reading The Gladiator there, and that one kind of took on a life of its own to some extent, because a character just kind of intruded that I just thought was going to be a bit part, and I introduced a Jewish gladiator slave named Theodos, and he ends up, he just demanded more time, and I just really loved that character, and he ended up really becoming sort of a co-star, and later on in the series, maybe even the lead role in the series, because he just had the story to tell of his own. And so sometimes the characters will sort of take over and take things in a different way, or sometimes things take a different path, and as you get to know your characters, they sort of begin to almost tell you their story as well, and what they would do next. And so that's always kind of cool as well. But I like to have a framework to build that on, and then we see where it goes from there. But yeah, I generally start with a seed idea, then a theme, so success, or what is godly success, and then I plot it out from there.
So when you're talking about first or third person, how do you decide which to go with, and do you have a preference, or is it just the story dictates that, or the characters?
So first person, if people aren't really familiar, is basically me telling the story. It would be if I was writing The Keeper's Crown and I wrote it just from Quintus's perspective. So, I am Quintus kind of thing, and this is my story, and then everything is done so I went here and they did this, and I went there and I said this and they said that, so it's all I and me, and, and whereas the third, the third person zooms out, and, so then it's, Quintus said this, and then Paul said that, and JL did this, and so it's all in a third-person perspective. So far in my writing career, I've usually done third-person, and I like to call it third-person limited, because I usually, within a certain scene, I get inside one character's head. So even though I'm not writing, from their point of view, in that I say I and me, I'm still writing sort of from their thought process and sort of get inside their head a little more, which is, I find, a useful thing, because I can, sometimes I go into the perspective of even the villain in the story and sort of see what their motivations are, and the villain never thinks that they're the villain. They always think they're the hero of their own story. So
right.
It's kind of neat to have that perspective as well. And so a lot of times I'll have 3 or 4 main characters that I'll write from their perspective over the course of the novel. That way I can move to different locations. If you're first person, then if Quintus isn't there, you don't know about it, and the reader can't know about it.
Right.
So especially in this one, I'm moving back and forth between, I start off with Quintus as a child, and then JL as a child. She's a Jewish girl as a child, and then slowly, moving back and forth and showing how their lives are starting to intertwine. And then I bring in Paul, and so sometimes I'm writing from Quintus, and sometimes I'm writing from JL, and then sometimes I'm writing from Paul, and then sometimes I'll go to the villain Malachi. So being able to move locations and focus on different people in that way is useful for a big story. This is it's a sort of an epic scale book that requires that, I think. So that's what I settled on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've dabbled in writing fiction, and I've never really buckled down and made a lot of headway with it. But when I've done it, it's seemed to me like it's much more useful most of the time to use the third person, simply for that, for the fact that you can be multiple places if you need to be. Like you said in your story, it's spread out all over the place through time and space, or places. So I think it would be. I would think in most cases it would be the most useful. But just my opinion.
You see first person a lot in like young adult sort of like dystopian novels or things like that are just focusing on one character and they're telling their story. And it does give a certain degree of immediacy to it, but
pacing would probably
a lot
be.
of historical fiction is written from third person, with some notable exceptions. You have Bernard Cornwell's Warlord series is written from the perspective of Uhtred, the warlord, and it is Uhtred, son of Uhtred, and he's telling his story, and it works, right? So depending on, how dominant one character is, and if you're just following one character, then it can work, but, I'm moving back and forth, and I actually try and guide people, with each chapter. I'm saying, Rome in 36 AD, and then Judea in 38 AD, and we're moving back and forth through, like you said, time and space, because it actually spans, about 15, 20 years over the course of the novel. So, and then multiple characters telling their stories. So, it seemed like it worked better for this. But
you mentioned the epic scale kind of this book, and I was surprised. I did the beta. I read the beta version, I guess. But I was surprised when I got the actual paperback in the mail, just how big it was. It's a pretty thick book.
For sure. 540 pages, so it's 132,000 words, which isn't, it's not beyond the pale for historical fiction, where you do have to create a world. You're not just writing about our world that people are fairly familiar with. If you set it in New York City, people have at least a general idea of what New York City looks like, and smells like, and but if you go back to Jerusalem in 60 AD, people aren't quite as aware of, what the layout and the sights and smells and, political situation, just everything is somewhat different. So you have to really create that world. So just the time that you spend on description and things. But it also, like you said, it spans a fair number of years. So, and I just, I wanted to do Paul justice, and hopefully people won't be scared off by the size of it. It is in line with most historical fiction, but hopefully people will just be glad to get their money's worth. As C.S. Lewis said, it's like there's no cup of tea or book that's too big. Something to that extent.
Yeah. I'll have to file that quote away like that. I would say coffee, but either way.
Yeah, there you go.
So how long does it take to write a book like that? I mean, by the way, it is worth the time, definitely. I love the book, but how long does it take to write a book like that?
It depends. The first book that I ever wrote, which is actually The Gladiator and the Legionnaire together, I got a little carried away with that one, and it was 160,000 words. So by the time the publishers at Word of Flame said, "Yeah, we want it, but it's a little big. Can we actually split it in half?" And they were able to split it in half, and it was still two good-sized books. So that book, because it was my first one, and it was sort of just a work in progress that I shelved different times, that one took me probably, I want to say 5, 6 years, something like that, from the time I started it till I actually saw it in print. Maybe a little longer.
Wow.
And then after that, and of course at that point you're doing research, you're learning the world, you're creating the characters. After that, the next couple of books went fairly quickly. I was actually able to write The Praetorian and The Healer. I wrote those in a winter each. I sort of write during the winter because I'm a landscaper and a pastor, so during the spring, summer, fall, I really don't have a whole lot of time. So I write during the winter when I'm off. We're here in Canada, so we don't do any landscaping. We've got 3 or 4 feet of snow on the ground over the winter, so not a lot of lawn mowing or landscaping or hedge trimming going on over the course of the winter, which is usually about 4 months for us. So from December through March, basically, we have snow on the ground, and so I would kind of hibernate, and I would write my books, and those books went fairly quickly because I already knew the characters, and sort of knew their motivations and those kind of things. Didn't have to create them, and I knew the world as well. So they went fairly quickly. But then with the Keeper's Crown, I kind of slowed down because still the Roman world, but earlier. So I still had to do research on that. There's a lot of research to do on Paul. Like I said, I read about 4 or 5 different historians' books about Paul. So just that takes some time. And then I wanted to really do justice to it. So, and it is a big book, a big project. So I wrote almost the whole thing in the winter 2 years ago. And then I wrote the last, say, third of it last winter. And then did a lot of work on just editing it and having beta readers and getting feedback and doing rewrites. Once you get the first draft, your work has just begun. You still end up doing another probably 5 to 6 rewrites going through. So by the time you finish it all, you've put a lot of time into it. So
wow.
And then over the course of this winter, just finalizing things and then getting all of the interior design and the cover design and all those sort of things lined up as well. So, and then just working on promotional plans and things. So I really wanted to just dedicate enough time to this rather than rushing it out. And I got very close, 2 winters ago, I got very close to having it done. And up to that point, I had just been sort of releasing one every year. And I was kind of like, I want to get this done. And then it ended up, I got back to work and I didn't have time to finish it. But I'm glad I actually had the extra time because I think if I had tried to rush it, I don't think it would have been as polished. And, it wouldn't have been what I wanted it to be and do justice to the topic. So.
Right. I think if you're going to take the time to write a 540-page book, you probably should take your time to do exactly how you want to do it. So
exactly, yeah. And I think Paul deserves the time, you know. And I
Right.
didn't want to, you know, it was kind of scary even just to tackle, you know, writing a book about Paul. I mean, it's been written, you know, he's been written about and exhaustively by, you know, fiction and nonfiction, and you know, he's just such a big character. I mean, he wrote half the New Testament, so to try and do justice and create a Paul that would resonate with readers was, you know, a challenge that I didn't want to rush and get it wrong. So maybe I still did. Well, you know, hopefully when I get to heaven, I can ask Paul and, you know, sit down with him and say, so how did I do? You know?
You mind reading this?
He'll probably say way off. I was nothing like that whatsoever, but good try. And, you know.
So do you, I know some of your books, the War Within series was through Word of Flame Publishing, right?
The first 3 of the 4, yeah.
First 3. Okay. So then do you self-publish now?
So I've moved into self-publishing now. Basically it gives me the, you know, greater freedom to figure out how I want to do promotions and just the artistic side of things. Greater freedom in that regard. So I'd still be open to a publishing deal. I actually had submitted The Keeper's Crown to, you know, a handful of agents, but it's also, you know, it's a pretty tough market to break into. It's you know, you have to have an agent pretty much in order to get into one of the bigger publishing houses that's actually going to promote your book. And even getting an agent, a lot of the agents aren't even taking submissions. So,
Wow.
So it's actually, yeah, it's pretty difficult to, you know, a lot of people, you know, if they even get an agent, they're, you know, they're crowing because it's pretty difficult to even get an agent. And then you have to try and have your agent get you the publishing deal. So, but yeah, trying to go ahead and self-publish it, but to put it out with the time and effort and quality. I mean, the tools are there nowadays, that as, you know, your own publishing house. I have my own publishing imprint, basically Double Edge Press, and
Okay.
then I subcontract the production of it to, you know, I can pick my own cover designer and work closely with them. I can pick my interior designer, my ebook designer. You know, I can pick my own editors. You know, so I subcontract those kind of things to put together the best product that's possible. And with the advances in technology, there's no reason not to do that. So I'm really, really happy with the way that it's all turned out.
Yeah, I was really impressed when I got the physical book in my hand, that because I assumed it was self-published, but with self-publishing, it's it's a double-edged sword, I guess, in a lot of ways, because it is so easy in one respect to get a book out there, but on the other hand, to do it right is still a whole lot of work. And you did it right. It looks great. The cover looks great. The layout, everything looks amazing. So I would think that, you know, people shouldn't be, and I don't, you know, not speaking really from experience, but after talking to you and talking to Pastor Larry Arrowwood, who's also self-published most of his stuff, it seems like you shouldn't be afraid to self-publish. But on the other hand, I feel like you should take it seriously. Make sure it's, like you said, a good quality version of whatever it is you're putting out there. Well,
that's the biggest thing, right? Is, you know, it is one of the challenges of self-publishing, because self-publishing kind of gets a bum rap because of, you know, the advent of, you know, like the Kindle and things like that, where people, you know, anybody with a word processor can, you know, spew out, you know, 75,000 words, and, you know, in 20 minutes they can have it up on Kindle and just slap one of their generic covers on it, and you're away to the races. You're a published author, you know, and so, you know, there's not the controls there that, and they're starting to try and work on, you know, if you get a lot of complaints about grammatical errors or something, you have to pull it down and revise and put it back up. So Amazon is starting to try and control the quality a little bit more, but it is a really big pond to try and surface in when you do put in the time and the effort to create a top quality product, because you can produce a book for free. right, on Kindle,
Oh,
or
yeah.
even on CreateSpace. It doesn't cost you a dime. If you have a word processor, you can throw it up there, and they'll create a cover for you, or you can just kind of take one of their templates and just put your title on it, and so a lot of people do that because there's no investment in it, right? But then
Right.
the end quality is just not there, right? So, with this book, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pay someone to do a professional cover design. I'm gonna pay someone, and my others as well, but pay someone to do a professional interior design, and we're gonna make this look like something that you would see on a shelf somewhere, which is actually kind of cool, kind of funny story. But I just went into our local Christian bookstore and was talking to the manager there. I'm going to be having a book signing and putting some books in there on consignment, and we were buying a couple other things for my son, an Action Bible and stuff, and so I just had my book, and so I had it in my hand, laid it on the counter, laid my other stuff on the counter, and so she rang through the Action Bible and the poster, and then she grabbed my book and was trying to scan the barcode on the back of my book. It just looks so professional. I guess.
Right.
She just figured it was theirs,
That's awesome.
So I was like, oh, no, that's mine. No, it's really mine. I wrote it.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that is the stigma of, like, whether it's self-publishing with books or independent music artists putting out their own stuff. Technology has just come so far that it's so easy, relatively speaking, at least, to put something out there. But there's a stigma kind of attached that you have to overcome, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think, I think if you're smart about promotion and you have that good quality product, I'm sure you're bound to, garner that attention, possibly as easily as if you were published through a small publishing house. I mean, I can't imagine that a lot of small publishers do a whole lot of promotion.
They don't, no. And they don't have the budget, or they just don't have the promotional division, and so they are limited in what they do. In fact, my fourth book is actually more readily available than my first three. You can actually get my fourth book on Amazon paperback, and actually can't get 1, 2, and 3. You have to go to the actual publisher's website. So it's actually a little bit more accessible to an independent publisher than a small publisher that doesn't use the venues to full extent. So
wow. Yeah, print on demand, I think, has changed. Well, obviously, it's completely changed the face of publishing. But I know Pastor Airwood has done his books, last several books, I think, that way, and then also reissued or even rewritten a couple of his older books, I think, and re-released them. And just night and day, between from the way it used to be to the way it is now.
Yeah, it is definitely, like you said, a two-edged sword. It does open the floodgates to anybody being a published author, but it also sort of limits the overall quality of the industry. So then it's more difficult for good books to surface. But anyway, that's the challenge, and I've got a lot of promotions going on right now, so hopefully it bears fruit.
Well, I hope so. We'd love to see you have success, because I think there's a need for I think more apostolics should be involved in more things, like writing fiction or even like Christian living books that reach outside of maybe our little corner of Christianity, or whether music artists, whatever, anything that can reach out into a broader, the broader world. I think apostolics being involved in that is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm really hoping with this book, that, I'm writing it, I'm my own publisher, so people aren't going to look at just, oh, that's by Word of Flame Press, that's a oneness, or, sort of almost slip in a little bit under the radar with things.
Right.
That, it is, apostolic in doctrine. And, at the end of the book, I just put in a historical note and said, some 21st century Christians might be a little confused about some of the portrayals of, baptism or receiving the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues, but I found it difficult to avoid that, because Paul in his own actions and his own writings. I cite a couple scriptures, Acts chapter 19 and in Corinthians, he says, I speak in tongues more than you all, and, things like that. And in Acts chapter 19, he's praying the apostles or the disciples of John through to the Holy Ghost, and they're speaking in tongues, and he's baptizing them in the name of the Lord Jesus. I said, in order to avoid being anachronistic, I had to use the baptism formulas and the Holy Ghost that they were using, in the way that they were doing it in the first century,
Right.
And whatever people want to do with that as a Christian reader of another denomination, whatever they choose to do with that, whether they say, well, times have changed, or if they say, well, no, that's absolutely wrong, he probably didn't do it that way, or they want to disagree with it, or maybe it'll make them think and say, maybe I should, look back and see, was that really how they baptized at that point, in the early church? Did they really baptize in Jesus' name? Were they really filled with the Holy Ghost speaking in tongues? And, hopefully, like the Bereans, search the scriptures and see if these things are so, and maybe somebody will come to full truth through it. So that's my hope with it, is that it will sort of cross that, in denominal lines, and especially, that's one thing that's nice with, having it online, having it as an ebook as well, that a lot of Christian readers are online and might pick up an ebook like that that's only $5.
Right.
That, I can't necessarily get into all these bookstores, and, especially if a bookstore or, a lot of the organizations that sell to bookstores are, Trinity or Pentecostal or Trinity based, so they're going to screen out my book,
Right.
But the internet allows you to just go directly to the reader, and hopefully Christian readers will pick this up and really enjoy it, and be ministered to through it.
That's great. So you're a pastor as well as an author. So, but both of these things are a ministry to you, right? It's not just a writing career or a hobby or anything like that. It's beyond all that. It's a ministry, right? So how do you view your, I guess this is probably selfish as far as a question goes. This is selfish for me because I'm in this position right now where I'm trying to figure out like what my ministry is going to look like. And right. I don't know really. I just kind of going with the flow and, trying to seek God's will, but just a little bit lost at the moment as to like what the direction is. Maybe that's, God teaching me to have faith, but, so how do you see your ministry? So being a pastor and also being a writer.
Well, it's sort of two sides of the same coin, I guess. That both are using words to minister, and both require the inspiration from God. Really, one's obviously much more local, and one is more global. But I do see both sides as a ministry, and that is the thing that keeps me going, really, I guess. And to be honest, sometimes I'm thinking, am I going to keep on with this writing thing or not? Because it's not one of those overnight, you become famous and you quit your day job kind of things.
Right.
Anybody that gets into writing or pastoring to get rich is probably not going to succeed very well. And that's part of the reason why, I wrote this book, like I was saying before, to see, what is success, right? Like,
right.
What would Paul say is success? Was Paul a success? Here he goes from being, the pinnacle of Jewish society. He said, I profited, in the Jews' religion above many of my equals in my own nation because I was so exceedingly zealous, for the traditions of my fathers. And, a lot of the historians that I looked into actually believe that Paul was a member of the Sanhedrin, which would have been the 71 elders, including the high priest, that basically ruled Israel as a religious but also sort of a political body, that he could have actually been a member of that group.
Wow.
And which would be why he would later say, when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I gave my voice or my vote against him, that he would have had a vote in that body at that point in time. So one way or another, whether he was or whether he was just sort of their, attack dog, he was definitely, he was up there. He was schooled at the feet of Gamaliel, who was one of the leading members of the Sanhedrin that we see in the book of Acts. And so he was definitely, high in Jewish society, Pharisee of the Pharisees, and from a prosperous family. He had both Roman citizenship and, a Jewish lineage. And, so by all marks, he was successful. He was wildly successful, and then to go from that to the road to Damascus and blind, and now he's sort of an itinerant preacher, going across the world and starting churches and stirring up trouble and, beaten and whipped and shipwrecked and stoned and, all these things that he went through, and finally ending up in a dungeon under Rome, and finally, brought before Nero and condemned to be beheaded. Is that success, right? Would he have viewed that as success? And the fact that he could say at the end, as he's there, literally down a hole in what used to be a cistern, was the Roman dungeon beneath the carcer, the prison there in Rome. And here he is, writing probably by an oil lamp, or dictating to Luke by an oil lamp. And, he's writing to Timothy and say, I am now ready to be offered. The time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. That's the victorious shout of a marathon runner who has followed the path.
Right.
He could have veered off, and, he could have kind of slipped out between the flags that God had marked out for him, and taken an easier road around the rocky places, or taken some shortcuts. So he said, no, I've finished my course. I've run the race that God has set before me, and there's a crown waiting for me. And so he viewed godly success as doing what God told him to do, regardless of the results. And if each one of us just takes that to heart, I think, and just you do what God tells you to do, no matter what the results are, that's godly success. So God's called me to write, so I write, and if that reaches one person, if that reaches 1 million people, in God's eyes, I'm running the race that he's set for me. And, it's the same way with pastoring. If I reach one kid, with the gospel, or if I reach 1,000 people, I'm doing what God told me to do, and that's success. And if every Christian would just do that and just listen for the voice of God and just do what God tells us to do, with the same kind of courage that Paul did, whether that takes you to the pinnacle of success or if it leaves you in the dungeon, Paul preached to Nero, but he didn't convert him, but
Right.
He converted those of Caesar's household, and he converted even among the Praetorian Guard. So is that success? He didn't convert the emperor, and he would go on to brutally persecute the Christians, but he converted people that were at the closest to the seat of power. What difference did that make in their lives and in the lives of other Christians? And if Paul wasn't there, what would it have looked like? What
Wow.
would the church in Rome have looked like, and what would the course of that have taken? So
I like that
really,
perspective.
yeah.
Because a lot of times I think we do measure success by, the world's idea of success, or even like, mega church pastors, or the people that are, the famous pastors or the famous authors, or whatever the case may be. We have this podcast, and sometimes we stack it up against, podcasts that are getting millions of downloads, and we're getting hundreds of downloads, or, so it's a challenge, because I think that's the natural thing to do, is to compare, to the next guy, to the best person in your field or whatever. When in reality, you're right. It's about, what did God call you to do? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing to the best of your ability? That's really all that matters.
Exactly. And, and I think I knew that, and, through writing the book, I kind of accepted that. And then, God kind of had to give me a reminder, because I was thinking, okay, well, this might be my last book, or my last book for a while, and godly success is doing what God wants me to do, and I'm writing, and so I'm doing this, and God kind of got me at the altar and asked me to take it a step further. And I just wrote a blog post today, when God tells you to give up, and that God actually asked me to give up this book, and to give it up to Him. And because even though I was saying, well, God, this is your ministry, and this is I'm giving it all to you, but I want the profit from it.
Right.
And if I sell 1 million copies, I'm going to quit my day job, and I'm going to be set for a while, And God kind of slapped me upside the head and said, no, if you're really going to give it to me, then you need to give it up to me. And He challenged me to give 100% of the profits to a couple of different charities. And one is Hope for Orphans Congo, which my parents started over in Africa. It basically takes care of 40 or 50 kids in a little village there in Africa, and feeds them, clothes them, gives them a roof over their heads, and schooling, and then takes care of about 200 other kids in the area around to go to school. And so I'm going to be funding that, with whatever profits, if it's $1,000 goes over there, if it's 10,000 or 100,000, God willing, whatever it is, it's going to go half to that, and then half to our local church here. We have a breakfast fund that we do for the kids. Some of them are disadvantaged and come to church hungry, and it's hard to focus on Bible study when your stomach's rumbling. So
exactly,
my wife and the ladies from the church have been doing a breakfast every Sunday for the last, 8 years that we've been here, just to feed the kids before Sunday school starts, and so just the funding of that, because it's a small church, so it is a bit of a burden, and then if we can expand beyond, if it's meeting more than, if it grows and we have more than we need for that, then we'll expand into, maybe we'll get a van for the youth or something, but it's all going back to the kids. And, I'm excited about that, because, I was thinking about it, and whenever God asks somebody to give up something, exciting things happened, right? He asked Abraham to give up Isaac, and he became the father of the faithful and the father of many nations and the line of Christ. He asked Gideon to give up the safety of his wine press, and he vanquished the Midianites. He asked the 3 Hebrew children to give up their bodies to be burned in the furnace, and they converted King Nebuchadnezzar. He asked a few fishermen to give up their ships and their nets, and they founded the church. He asked Paul to give up his freedom, and he reached Nero and those of Caesar's household and the Praetorian Guard. Every time that God asked someone to give up something that's valuable to them, and this is my baby. It's been 3 years in the making. And to give it up is kind of hard, but whenever God asks for someone to give up something, it always leads to exciting results. So
absolutely,
I'm pretty stoked. I'm pretty excited, and I think this is going to go someplace. So
that's awesome. So were your parents missionaries by chance?
No, they're not missionaries, although they've sort of been doing missions work over there in the process. They go over pretty much every year. Well, actually have every year for the last 6 or 7 years. At least my dad. Sometimes Mom goes as well. She's gone 3 out of the 7 or 4 out of the 7. But they go over to the village and just make sure that everything's being run smoothly. They spend about a month there usually, and make sure that everything's running smoothly, and the kids are being taken care of, and bring over gifts. They just went this past Christmas and brought everybody a Christmas gift, and but in the process of going over there, they've actually made a lot of contacts with other pastors and local churches and things of that nature, and are sort of bringing them to full truth.
Wow, that's amazing.
Showing them baptism in Jesus' name and receiving the Holy Ghost and these things that they didn't see before. And they're fairly close in their theology to what the UPCI believes, with just these few exceptions. They didn't understand the oneness and stuff, and now the Dad's been doing seminars with them and preaching and teaching and showing them, and so they've actually done, I think it's up into the 200s, the number of people that they've baptized while they've been
Wow.
over there that Dad's baptized, or that, he's been there for the baptisms. So whole churches are just converting to oneness and converting to Acts 2:38 salvation. And actually, he was just saying, I was talking to him the other day, and he said there's a group of like 5 or 6 different churches in one city and a few churches in another city, like several hundred people that wrote a letter and gave it to him to try and pass on to the UPCI, saying, can we join you? Because there's,
Wow.
I don't know if there's a missionary there in Congo, or if there is, he's far on the East Coast. So it's quite a distance, especially given the conditions there. Like, travel is not easy. So Dad's trying to make connections there for them to actually be able to come under the UPC umbrella, because they've wholeheartedly converted over, and they just want to have somebody that's sort of over them, and that they can have the fellowship with. So
Wow, that's incredible.
yeah, so they're doing a lot of mission work over there while they're also doing a good work for the kids. So it's pretty amazing the way God's using them.
That's incredible. I think when you just, give yourself, or like you said, give yourself to God like that and just say, here it is. I think he will do some amazing things.
Yeah. And it's pretty crazy over there. The last time Dad went, they were in the rainy season, which they don't normally go in the rainy season, but so the roads even out to the village, Mom actually wasn't able to go out because the only way that you could get out there, the roads were flooded, and the only way you could get out there was perched on the back of a motorbike. So a guy driving the motorbike and then just sitting on the back of it, and not a Harley Davidson. You're talking like dirt bikes,
Wow.
and with a big container of stuff, to bring out to the village, perched on behind that. So sometimes, Dad had to get off and walk and stuff, and so I think it took 8 or 9 hours for him to go, and I think it's about 100 miles, maybe.
Oh my word!
It took 8 or 9 hours for him. Sometimes he had to get off and walk around certain things. There's just this eyebrow of a trail around this flooded road, that they had to go around because it was just wiped out. It was just mud. So it's quite a challenge even just to get out there. But they're doing a lot of things to really raise the entire area. They've invested in a flock of goats, a herd of cows, some cash crops. They brought over and actually introduced crops into the area, like beets and carrots and cabbages and things that never grew there. They never grew them there before, and so now they're bringing over the seeds and renting fields, and then having the kids learn how to farm these different vegetables. And because it's a vegetable that nobody else in the area is growing, they're actually able to sell that as a cash crop as well, and be able to fund part of the orphanage through that, or just eat better at the orphanage as well. But so it's pretty cool how they've introduced different things. They've introduced a mill, because people used to have to transport their grain all the way to another village in order to get it ground and then carry it all the way back. And so they just invested a little bit, and they have a small mill there now at the orphanage where the villagers can bring, and they can pay in grain for the orphans to eat. And the orphans are learning how to run this mill, and then people don't have to transport it, 30 or 40 miles to the next village that actually has a mill, and then bring it all the way back, on their backs. So anyway, just a lot of different initiatives that they're doing, and 100% of all the money that they raise goes directly over there. Mom and Dad and the directors of the organization. It's a Canadian registered charity now. They don't take any funds. They don't fund their own trips when they go over there. They pay for that out of pocket. They take time off work. They pay for their own tickets and their own transportation, hotels, and everything. And so they're pretty determined that everything goes right over there. And of course, with the price of things there versus here, they were able to build the first building of the orphanage and get it all set up for like $7,000.
Oh my word!
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not, by our standards, it's not a lot of money.
No.
But to them, it makes a world of difference. So Yeah, so that's basically what I'm wanting to support. And so if we sell a few copies of the book, we might end up building another orphanage over there. So
that's amazing. Yeah, that's great. It's hard to imagine that $7,000. It seems like such a little amount of money, by our standards.
Yeah, you can barely buy an old beater of a car for $7,000
Right,
here.
right.
But you can build an orphanage that houses 24 kids. And that was for the first dorm, and then now they've built a second dorm, and so they're expanding and adding on to it. But that was the initial investment. So it's amazing what you can do with just a little. Little is much when God is in it, right? So.
Absolutely.
Yep. We always like to ask this of our guests every time they come on, but do you have any book recommendations and stuff that what you like to read, and any recommendations for our listeners?
Sure. Christian fiction, I grew up and really enjoyed Frank Peretti.
Right.
We had already mentioned his Pierce in the Darkness and His Present Darkness. And that's a series that'll make you want to pray.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It definitely encourages you. And how much of it is exactly spot on with the way that spiritual warfare goes on, I don't know, but close enough. And I definitely encourage you to pray.
Yeah.
I love C.S. Lewis as well. His Narnia series and the Screw Tape Letters and things like that. If you want kind of a relaxing historical fiction read, I like Gilbert Morris. He just passed away, I think, last year, but his Winslow series is really good. It kind of traces the whole history of the United States, right from the Mayflower all the way up through, I think, World War II.
Okay.
So that's a pretty cool series as well, and pretty easy to read. Always has action and a love story to the books. So I always enjoyed those growing up. Secular, I like Ellis Peters. I'm reading a lot of Ellis Peters right now. She's got a series of medieval mysteries called the Brother Cadfael Chronicles. That if you like mysteries and you kind of like sort of a meld of history with mystery, which is kind of cool. So I'm enjoying that. I like reading some Bernard Cornwell, some Conor Golden, historical fiction as well. So I'm fairly immersed in the historical fiction quite a lot, but I like to branch out with some other authors sometimes as well. But I read what I write, and I write what I read for the most part. When I have the time to read, that's what I like to do. And don't have as much time to read as I'd like, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks actually while I'm working, because I'm landscaping and mowing lawns and trimming hedges and things like that. So I've started this past year listening to a lot of audiobooks as well. So get in some quote-unquote reading.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Actually got me interested in doing my own book as an audiobook. So I'm going to be doing The Keeper's Crown as an audiobook. That's probably going to be released sometime in April once the producer's done with that. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I drive a lot for work, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. But I've listened to one audiobook, I think, in my life. But I've given a lot of thought to that because I don't have time to read because I work a lot, and a lot of the time is just spent driving. So I could listen to some audiobooks. I need to try that.
It makes the time fly. I'll be done. Because I drive an hour into Ottawa and work there most days, and then an hour home, and then a lot during the day is stuff that I don't have to focus on too much, and just manual labor. So pop in the earbuds and listen to a book, but at the end of the day, you're kind of almost disappointed when you get home because it's like, I've had a good part of the book. It just kind of made the day fly by.
Right.
So I highly recommend it. It's quite enjoyable.
Were you a part of the audiobook experience, like as far as like picking out the reader, or are you reading it? But
no, I had thought about reading it, and if I had a little bit more training and the facilities to do it,
right,
I might do that. But because I do like books that are read by the author as well, but.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm actually I am involved in it though because it is self-published. So I'm I was able to pick my reader and the voice talent, and they auditioned for it, and we set up a contract to split the profits on it. It's basically a royalty-based contract,
right.
So yeah, it works out pretty good.
Would that
through
be
ACX? It's through Audible.
Yeah.
So if you have any book that's either a paperback or a Kindle book, once it's on Amazon, then you can post it on ACX, and you go through the process of setting up an audition and give an audition script, and then you can either wait for people to audition, or you can go and listen to other people's samples, voice talent samples, and invite them to audition. And then some people want to be paid by the edited hour, and then other people are okay with doing a royalty-based, where you split the royalties on any books that are sold. So since I'm not made of money, that's the way that I went, and hopefully it'll be a boost to both of our careers. So,
well, I don't think we have I'm trying to think if we have any more questions. You know what? We usually do a book giveaway when we have an author on, but since your profits are going to charity, we won't ask you to give away a book, but we will actually sponsor the book giveaway for this one. How about that? So we'll buy a copy and we'll send it to one of our listeners. Yeah, we want to do our part to support. We really like what you're doing. So, if people want to reach out to you or learn more about you, is there a good way to do that on social media or your blog? What will be the best way?
Yeah, a few different ways people can connect with me. I am on Facebook, so if you look up Nathan D. Maki, I've got an author page there that you can look up. I'm on there quite a lot. I have Twitter as well, which is at Nathan D. Maki as well. And then I have my blog / website at www.nathandmaki, and that's MAKI is Maki.com. So people can look me up any of those places, or just drop me an email, nathandmaki@hotmail.com. So trying to keep it consistent across the board. So NathanDMaki at any of those Facebook, Hotmail, Twitter, websites will bring you to me. So I'm always happy to interact with people and connect with people that are reading. So.
And where would you prefer that they buy the book? Is it better that they do it on Amazon, or is it better they do it through your website?
I would probably say, for the most part, if people want to go ahead through Amazon, I make slightly more money if people buy it from the website, but it probably boosts my standings on Amazon, and I also don't have to kind of cross the border and mail it out and things. But if people want to buy from my website, there is the shop there as well. It's the same price as on Amazon, and then they do get a signed copy. So either one really. Amazon's probably easiest for everybody involved, but if people are wanting the signed copy, or if they want to take the little bit of extra time that it might take to get from Canada back down to the States, then by all means they can go on the website as well. So.
All right, and we would encourage if anybody does read it to leave a review on Amazon, right?
Yes, please do. It lets me know that people are reading, and more than that, it encourages other people to read, because that is one of those ways. As we said, that there's millions and millions of books out there right now, so reviews is really how a lot of people judge and gauge whether the book is quality or not. So if you read it, please do leave a review. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it. We enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's great.
Wow, what a great interview and a great episode. Just want to thank Brother Nate Maki for joining us, taking time out of his day to reach out to us and let us feeble minds interview a wonderful man of God and a very good writer. I highly recommend his books. I did end up finishing the Keeper's Crown, excellent. And I have read Gladiator and the War Within series, another excellent book. Especially if you like Roman history and with mixed in with Christianity. It's really a great book. I highly recommend it. Stay tuned for the book giveaway. That'll be through us, like we said, and we'll be posting on the various social medias on further details on that. So look out for that. Just want to thank everybody for listening today. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Two Pentecostals and a Microphone.
If you'd like to join the conversation, you can find us on social media at Two Pentecostals. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also check our website, twopentecostals.com, for show notes, news, and links to Bryce and I's blogs. Also, it really helps us out if you can go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, hopefully 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps us get found in the rankings, and we truly appreciate it. See you next time on Two Pentecostals and a Microphone.